Why is there suffering? You need to know this for Ascension. Hi, I'm Saratoga Ocean, and I help people to spiritually awaken and embark on a powerful path of ascension. In this video, I'm going to explain why suffering exists. And this is very important information that you need to know in order to ascend. And if you're new to my channel, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you are notified whenever I post a new video. Now let's get into why suffering exists. Now, I work with a group of angelic extraterrestrial beings who go by the name of Telstar. And our role is to assist with planetary ascension and human evolution. So we look at the situation on this planet from a position that is outside of this universe. And this way we can share a much more expanded perspective about exactly what is going on this planet. And understanding the bigger picture of why suffering exists and why duality exists is really essential if you want to position your consciousness for ascension. Now, have you ever heard the saying that it is impossible to solve a problem from within the problem itself? And that is absolutely true. And it's also true when we look at solving the problem of human and planet-wide suffering. I mean, let's not forget that it's not only humans that suffer here. All of nature suffers because of entropy and the food chain. I mean, animals suffer, plants suffer, literally everything that's alive suffers here. And that's because in order for anything to live on this earth, something else must die. Because every life form ingests other life forms in order to survive. Isn't that weird? So, I mean, you can be a vegan, but that doesn't really solve the wider problem because you are still ingesting living things. I mean, you can't help it, right? You have to in order to survive. So we want to talk about the bigger picture because the whole goal of ascension is to end this phenomenon of suffering once and for all for every living thing, not just human beings. Now, I'm going to point out a few, maybe some kind of intense things that are really self-evident when you open your eyes. But you know, guys, if we are going to function here as empowered light workers, we need to be strong within ourselves and strong within the truth of the real story of the universe where all lives in a state of oneness and love and beauty and peace. And we need to have such confidence in that truth that we are able to really look at the situation here so that we can play an empowered role in solving it. Now, the thing is, Earth is a very violent planet. Now, the reason that it seems that humans are the real source of violence here is because we are empowered creators. So when our consciousness is in a bad place, unfortunately, we can do a lot more damage on a planetary level. But we also have to remember that animals, plants, and insects also suffer because of the way that nature is set up here. I mean, what about wounded animals in the wild who have no one to help them? And you know, why do you think it's so heartbreaking to see a tree destroyed? It's because we know that a tree is a living, conscious being, right? I mean, it's not just some inanimate object standing there. And you know, there's always suffering inflicted by natural events like wildfires, earthquakes, hurricanes. Plants, animals, humans, everyone suffers from those violent events in nature as well, right? So, as light workers, as starseeds, it's so much better if we just take the whole problem and look at that from a larger perspective in terms of how it can all be solved. So now here's the simple answer as to why suffering exists. All suffering is basically the result of duality. The duality of fear and love, life and death, happiness and sadness. So let's address suffering from a place that is transcendent of the place from where suffering is actually happening. Because that's the only way, guys, that we can get leverage in our ascension process. We need to address suffering from an extraterrestrial and an extra-universal perspective. So extraterrestrial means beyond the earth, and extra-universal means beyond this universe. In other words, we have to view this situation from a place that is beyond all the realms where duality exists. And that sounds a lot more empowering, don't you think? Now, we know that the ultimate solution to suffering is ascension. But the problem is that we actually get in our own way by trying to simultaneously validate the existence of suffering while at the same time hoping to eliminate it. Because that would be the ultimate goal for any light worker, right? To do whatever is possible to eliminate suffering for good. So therefore, answering the question, why is there suffering, seems to me to be the first most important thing to know. And here's where you may have to come to terms with some things that you may or may not be quite ready to do. You have to stop justifying the existence of suffering and lending some sort of spiritual significance to it. You see, because that is completely counterproductive if you truly envision the elimination of all suffering, which is actually the end result of ascension. So let me give you an example of what I mean. There are all kinds of widespread beliefs about suffering and why we need it, even though we hate it. So let's talk about what some of those are, because if we can clear those away, we're going to start to have tremendous clarity by listening to our hearts. Now, some of the most famous beliefs about suffering are religious ones. You know, like God is making us suffer to punish us. Or, you know, God is giving us some kind of really weird test to see if we make the right choices. And then there's karma, right? Well, good luck incarnating and getting out of that one. And then we also have some more modern versions of this. One of them goes like this. The Creator wanted to have all of these different experiences of itself, so it split itself off into a gazillion different pieces to see what all of these weird experiences would feel like. And this is a good one because in this one, you can include other planets and other ET civilizations. So this explanation can even account for galactic and interstellar situations. And even better, or more strangely, depending on how you look at it, this explanation even includes a great excuse for why we forget who we are. According to this explanation, we need to forget who we are so we don't realize that we really are the Creator trying to experience all of this stuff, because that would just ruin the whole experience. And I'm going to do another video later on about the real reason that we forget who we are when we come here. And it's not what you think. So be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss that one. Now, let's not leave out one last, most popular excuse for human suffering. You chose it, right? I mean, you know, you just wanted to know what it would be like to be brutally murdered and terrorized. And hey, you know, starving to death might be a cool thing to go through. Kind of like a weird cosmic amusement ride. Seriously? Sorry, I'm just not buying that one. And guess what? You don't have to either. So we as humans have answered the question, why is there suffering, in all kinds of crazy ways? I mean, we don't really know the answer, but, you know, our crazy explanations certainly make us feel a little better. Basically, here's the simplicity of what it is we're doing to try and frame suffering in all of these erroneous ways. We know that God is love, And then we say to ourselves, well, God created everything, therefore, God must have created suffering too. And because God is love, then he, she, it must have created suffering for a very good reason. And voila, now you have just made suffering okay. Now you need to think about how this messes up your head on a subconscious level. Because I think we could safely say that all prayers are essentially about a request for relief from some form of suffering. But wait a minute, you just convinced yourself that God created suffering for a good reason. So on a subconscious level, your prayer for relief could actually be going against the will of God. Now here's the most important reason for why I'm bringing this up. By believing all of these excuses for suffering, you have just introduced a deadly form of duality into your prayers on a subconscious level. Because behind your prayers for relief, there's an insidious doubt lingering as you unconsciously hold on to a belief that the existence of suffering is God's will. So no wonder it's hard to have faith that your prayers will be answered. And it's no wonder that we humans are so slow to evolve. So I can tell you that the real cause of suffering is duality. And duality is actually a matter of physics. It's really not about spirituality at all. Duality is actually the result of a very strange experiment that took place in this universe. And the experiment was designed to answer kind of a silly question. The question was this: I wonder what would happen if something were known by what it's not instead of by what it is. Now, since everything that exists is a manifestation of omnipresent love, then the only way to conduct an experiment that would answer this question was to create the first original lie. And the lie would look like this. Instead of something existing in a state of I am omnipresent love, a lie would be created to go against this truth. The lie would be, I am not omnipresence, or I am not omnipresent love. See how simple that is? So now, instead of oneness, you have two things. You have the truth and a lie. And that is really the essence of how duality was created. Now, the thing is, the truth and a lie can never be reconciled. And out of this simple experiment, an entire universe of problems was created. Suffering being the chief problem. Of course, suffering occurs when the lie of I am not omnipresent love fights against the truth of I am omnipresent love in order to maintain its survival. So all of the suffering on this planet, including the bizarre way in which nature is constructed, is the result of this very strange experiment. Now, why do we need to know this in order to ascend? Because ascension in this universe is ultimately about correcting this very devastating error. Now, we can drag our ascension process out for eons and eons as we continue to make excuses for all of the problems and suffering that ascension is designed to eliminate. I mean, we can continue to hang out in 3D, 4D, 5D, and beyond while continuing to support duality as some kind of necessary spiritual experience for those who are suffering. But this is like putting one foot on the accelerator while you have the other foot steadfastly on the brakes. You're not going to go very far anytime soon because guess what? If you are a light worker or a star seed, even if you go back to a more peaceful place, you are always going to be called upon again to come to other planets that are in these types of dire situations. Because this stuff exists all over the cosmos. And think about it, is that really your final aim? You know, to just keep recycling through the same ongoing need for help? Or do you want yourself and this entire universe to finally complete the ascension process? Because ultimately, it's really about the entire universe ascending and restoring the truth of omnipresent oneness once and for all. And then we can all get on to much more interesting things. So, to complete this message, there are two things that you need to do. The first thing is to consider releasing all of the spiritual excuses that you may have bought into for the existence of suffering, especially those excuses that validate its existence. And the second most important thing that you need to do is to listen to your heart. Because you see, I'm willing to bet something. I'm willing to bet that your heart is going to tell you that all of these excuses and spiritual explanations for suffering are preposterous. I will bet that your heart will just deliver the flat-out truth to you very directly. I think your heart's probably going to tell you that the bottom line is that suffering should not exist at all. Period. And that life would be so much better without it. And you know, some people think that the heart is just too simple and shouldn't be taken all that seriously. But your heart is simple because it wants to put you on the fast track to ascension. Not the slow, meandering version through all kinds of dimensions and dire incarnations that your mind would have you follow. So the most powerful thing that you can do as a starseed or a light worker or anyone else who wants to ascend to a higher level of reality is simply to really listen to your heart. Because your heart is a direct line to the ultimate truth. It's a direct line to omnipresent love and oneness. I mean, the heart is simple because there's no messing around with all of the excuses designed to validate suffering and duality. So take advantage of this powerhouse of truth, light, and love that exists right within you. Listen to your heart and let its wisdom light your way through the entire ascension process. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and share it out with anyone else who you think would benefit. And if you want more support for your spiritual awakening and ascension, then subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you are notified every time I post a new video. And with that, I'm sending you love, light, and loads of positive energy. Have a beautiful day. Namaste.